So, welcome to the Animal Resistance University. Today, we'll be having a talk from Dipesh about activism and animal rights in Nepal, which will be really interesting. Awesome, thank you so much. So, maybe we can do now like some questions if people have questions. I see somebody send a question. You can also just speak up now if you want to, but I'll start with a question in the chat. Thank you, Dipesh, for that presentation. Have you learned anything specific about, for example, the Dalit lives movement or other in Nepal that you think is helpful for the animal rights movement?
Okay, there's not much development in Dalit life movement. It's still a big issue here, but I've been seeing other issues like there's an environmental group who's been fighting, who's been trying to change the laws rather than changing the minds of the people, and looking at them, it is we have learned that we can make connections with people who have a similar mindset inside the people in the system, and they actually care about the movement and they will help you bring the change forward. And it's not about like making a new law or making a huge change, but they can bend small they can bend the laws in small ways that will help the movement grow further in a huge steps. So that's something that we've learned, and we are focusing on to doing more on this animal rights movement.
You can also see the questions in the chat if you want to reread them. Somebody also asked, what is AR movement? AR is animal rights movement. AR is just a shortcut for exactly, animal rights movement.
Right now we have a small group of activists. We grew up to 40 members in our group, but the regular volunteers or the core members in our group are about 15 people. So we 15 people try different form of activism right now here in Nepal, and it's mostly the vegan activism we try rather than I mean there are activists who are focusing on ending the religious slaughter and ending different form of small animal rights issues, but we are focusing more on the vegan issue and educating people on what veganism is. So it's about 10 to 15 people.
And then someone asked if it is related to any NGO or an international NGO. The animal rights activists, the animal rights movement, or like activism, I think. If that is related to any NGO or international NGO, like an organization or something.
We are working with ourselves only right now. We do not have any organization. Like we just formed a project called Project Compassionate Nepal, just out of the blue, and then we started to ask people for volunteers. And we are just like kids. We are students, and we just started doing the activism. So we are not related to any NGO or INGO.
Can you repeat the name?
It's Project Compassionate Nepal. So we
Do you
just
also have
sorry.
Facebook or Instagram or something social media wise for your group?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page. We are not. Yeah, I can share it in the group later.
Do you have local groups throughout Nepal, or is it just concentrated in one area?
Right now, it's just a local group. We like veganism is such a new concept here that it's very difficult to find vegan activists around different parts of Nepal, and it's even difficult to find people who are willing to take leadership position. So it's right now here in the capital city of the country, and we work throughout the area, throughout the city in Kathmandu, and we ask people to do social media activism if they are outside the city. But right now it's just the local area.
And what sort of activities do you do in the city? Do you do information stalls and that sort of thing?
Yes, we started with outreach, and we do food testing, like vegan food testings, and we do protests and rallies about vegans, and mostly it's about making people aware that the movement is starting here in Nepal. And even though our main focus, uh, act, main activism is more outreach based, now we are moving more towards visuals and more towards uh, documenting about how animals are transported and how animals are taken to slaughterhouses.
And do you produce your own literature, your own leaflets and
Uh,
booklets and things like that?
till now, we have been using whatever we can find in internet, because it's very difficult to find accurate information with local people. And right now we are trying to collect data with our own primary sources, and after that, like, we are going to focus more on printing our own literature.
There was also a question because you mentioned vigils, so that maybe a little related to this question. If you get any assistance from any foreign animal rights organization, like for example, Animal Safe Movement.
Yeah, we have just um, not we, but I have just joined the animal save movement, and we have not been able to start much of activism right now because we started just after the lockdown started. Uh, so we are trying to get information on how to take the visuals, how to take it more without causing more violence, and taking it systematically. So yeah, we are now first looking at animal save movement and how they are taking the activism, and we're trying to learn from them.
And then I had a question myself. How is the country like um, based on like protests? Like, do they allow protests? Is like any protest, is it illegal, or can you just protest if you want, or do you need to have like allowance of the city, or how does that exactly works in Nepal?
Uh, to do protest, if you are disrupting the highway, then you have to have a permit and you have to inform the traffic beforehand that you are going through this area and doing this protest. Other than that, you are allowed to do the protest without any permits.
And how does the public react on it? Are they usually peaceful towards it, or is it often like do people get violent, or um, does it
It's
also depends on your approach, maybe?
yeah, of course, it depends upon the people. Sometimes some people are aggressive by nature. They keep shouting to everything we say. But most people, they are more willing to learn about what's happening and what's this new concept that's been coming up. And it's mostly peaceful. Yeah, till now we have done about three animal rights rally, and it's all been like peaceful.
Are there any politicians in Nepal who are sympathetic towards you?
No, not yet. So difficult to find politicians who actually speak up how they, even if they have such views. But we do work with some departments of the government who who help in minimizing the pain and suffering of the animals, or who helps in protecting the environment. So we try to approach them and try to bring the message in such a way that it will eventually help the animals.
So there's a long question in the chat. What sort of activities can I do in my city to make people understand about veganism rather than just showing YouTube documentaries and some videos? Because I don't have any other person who is vegan in my city as far as I know.
Uh, to to make people understand about veganism, I think the first better way we could approach is by outreach, or by doing school presentations, and that would give a lot of room for people to have an interaction about what they are confused on, what they have questions on, rather than just watching a video on YouTube that somebody else suggested. But along with that, showing people that veganism is about being peaceful and being kind rather than pushing an agenda. I think that's something people in Nepal really feel pushy about. Like people taking some idea from different country and then bringing here in Nepal. So people feel that uh, as something that's been put into their culture, which was not present in previously. So making them understand that veganism is actually being kind and being compassionate, and talking to them like you are trying to make them uh, like you're trying to guide them through a process rather than attacking them. Like that's something that we vegans should learn, I think, because at the beginning of activism everyone is a little more energetic and they want to dump all the information and shout and everything. But I think if you can take it um, kindly, if you can explain the person about all those things and still not be offended when they give different excuses, then that would be very helpful on making them realize that vegans are not actually pushy, and they could, even if they reject the idea right now, they could still be open later on to do more research on that. uh,
Yeah, and I just want to give some personal advice or my opinion to Sanyana. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce that right. Not sure which country you're from, but what I've seen happening in the past is that if a presentation is being done in schools, that they do a kind of activism event afterwards and invite the students after the talk to join the, it can be an outreach or it can be even a vigil or something, um, to join the event after school or something, and that's then how local groups were kind of created. Um, or I'm not sure how close other cities are from you, but if there's some other vegans or some other activists in like a city which is fairly close, it might be possible to like um, meet up with them. Like maybe they can meet you in your city and help with an event, or help with like creating these talks if you're not comfortable talking in schools yourself, or to like maybe meet up with people from another city. But then I'm not sure how close other cities are to your city. So, but that might also be uh, a solution to like start with people from other cities, and then once you have established some people in your city, you can go on with the people of your city. And then there was another question in the chat, if Dipesh, if you're vegan by birth or if you changed to a vegan later.
I wasn't vegan by birth. I changed to veganism later on. I watched this documentary called Home, and that made me really conscious about the environment, and then dig more deeper into it, and I found about the animal agriculture, and then I turned vegetarian, and then watching all those videos about how baby calves are separated and male chicks being grinded, those things, like you are not told about those things. Like even when you are going vegetarian, people still think that milk and eggs do no harm, and when you actually witness what happens to those babies, then like it really puts a pressure on you about what you are consuming. And I think it's been about 6 years now that I become vegan, and almost 7 years that I was vegetarian before that.
How was it you got other people to help you? Because I presume it started off just with you, and then other people joined. How was it you managed to persuade the other people to join you in the group?
So, the most important role that took place in building our group was social media. So before I met any other vegan, I just had few friends, like 2 or 3 people, and then we made this group called Project Compassionate Nepal, and we just made a page and left it there. And after we found out about Anonymous for the Voiceless, we tried our own form of outreach here in Nepal. And when we started posting pictures and videos about those activism, and people started messaging us saying that, oh, we didn't know like vegan activism is so active here in Nepal as well, we want to join as well. And from there we actually started building up more uh, volunteers in our group. And slowly I thought, um, if people are not aware about any vegans here in Nepal, if nobody is active, then nobody will know what's going on, and nobody will know how to become active. So I even started a page where I keep on sending keep on posting the news about what's happening animal related here in Nepal. So from there people start to message about if this is just about the information, or if this page promotes veganism or vegetarianism. And from there I got lots of people who are vegan, who turned vegan themselves by watching videos, but didn't know other people uh, around their circle who were vegans. And since they since when you first find people who believe what you believe, then it becomes a strong bond between people, and there's a motivation of doing something more, and that's how we build the community.
So would you say it would be a good idea if someone feels they're alone, if someone's in a city and they feel they're the only vegan in the city or in the town, do you feel that first of all it would be a good idea for that person to start a Facebook group in order to attract other vegans? Would that be a good start?
Yeah, I think that would be a great start because even when I went vegan, the first thing I searched was uh, my city name and vegan, and I was surprised to find out that there were people who were vegan there. So I think it's a nice start to open a Facebook page or a group with your city name. So if somebody is sourcing, then it would be easier for them to find a local people who is already vegan.
And then I also saw a question from Prina or Prina. Um, what do you think is the biggest difference in how to talk to people in Nepal or to another place where veganism is already very common? Like, for example, the difference between talking to people in Nepal and, for example, London, where you find something vegan on every corner of every street.
So if we are talking to people who in a place where veganism is more common, then they are more aware about what veganism is, or they are aware about vegan activism but not fully aware about what veganism stands for, because there are lots of misinterpretation about what vegan activists do and how preachy they are. In that sense, you the activism should be more focused on how the animals are treated and why this movement exists, and, and places like in Nepal where veganism is new, it's a very different approach to talking with people. We should even take in consideration about how the people, local people, are viewing the new concept according to their culture, because most of the people feel attacked that there's a different viewpoint coming inside their culture and trying to disrupt their culture. So we have to be more careful on in framing it in such a way that we have to show veganism actually exists already in their culture and it's just a few steps away from what they already believe in. So I think uh, it's very important to do more research in places where veganism is not that common, and then start talking about veganism. It's very, I won't say very easier, but it's easier in places where veganism is common, where there are vegan restaurants and vegan food easily found. It's easier to talk with people there, but to in a place where people are not aware about the concept of veganism, it's very difficult to not offend people while talking about veganism. Like your motive could be very good, but if they take it uh, take it as if you're attacking their culture or attacking their religion, then it will create a big problem.
Mm, see, there was another question in the chat. I'm surprised people say they are vegetarian, but they consume fish and eggs. Is there any term like ovo-lacto-vegetarian?
I
And then
think people who
Michael,
consume fish are pesco vegetarian, I think. And
yeah, pescatarian, I think.
pescatarian, yeah. So there are lots of terms for people who reduce the flesh. So
Yeah, like nowadays, loads of new like those terms come out, like flexitarian and then flexi-vegan or freegan, and there's like loads of terms with different meanings. but yeah, they do exist. But then Michael also gave an answer more about like what veganism is, like that it's more comprehensive than vegetarianism, and it's not just about the diet. It's not just about what you're eating. It's also about like clothing, entertainment, work, etc. So it's more of like a lifestyle, more of like a mindset instead of like just a diet. Whereas vegetarianism and like pescatarian and like all those are more diet based. I think that's the kind of the point Michael wanted to make. I see somebody saying and flexitarian is an omnivore. It's just a trendy word for someone who eats vegetarian or vegan once in a while.
And it seems that veganism, the word vegan, also have a tendency to confuse people about that it being just about the diet. Uh, I think one of the speakers here talked about whether to use the term vegan or not, and it was really interesting. And we are trying to find a way of including animal in our activism rather than just saying vegan, and like people getting confused over what that is.
And I had a question myself. How is like the plant-based foods in Nepal? Like, is it traditionally very vegan friendly, or does it contain a lot of meat? Is there even like a lot of milk or like eggs involved?
It's heavily plant-based, uh, shifted, but you'll find milk products in most like, few of the dishes as well. So you can easily remove the milk products. Meat is not that common, except in the city areas. So if you go to remote places, or even like even to places where there are not uh, which are not tourist based, so those places will mostly focus on plant based options. So it would be traditionally all those whole food plant based options. But right now, like there are plant based milks and plant based meat companies are growing. So it's growing here in city area as well, and people are shifting from traditionally eating animal flesh to now trying the vegan options.
But you said traditionally it's already a lot plant-based, or
Yeah,
did I miss it?
but the snacks, if you look at the dinner and lunch, those are all plant based. And but if you look at the snacks, so those contains lots of meat items.
And do you see a lot of like those Western businesses like the fast food chains like McDonald's popping up, or uh, is that like
Yeah, there's KFC. I think yeah, I've seen one KFC chain here. But it's morely local based chains here, and they all focus on the meat based products. So it is not heavily like it's not that junk food. So it's more like dumplings and chow meins. So it's those things which could be made vegan, but they add chickens and buff, and so that makes it harder for vegetarians to dine at those places. Some places don't even have a completely vegetarian option. So finding vegan in those chains are a little difficult. But in local stores, which are owned by small families, so you could find vegetarian options that could be made vegan.
Do you feel there's a strong link with the environmental movement in that a very large area of the oppression of other animals is the destruction of the natural world?
Can you repeat the question again?
What I was saying, do you feel that there's a particularly strong link between veganism and the environmental movement? Because a very large way in which animals are oppressed is through the destruction of the environment. For instance, the climate crisis is destroying millions of wild animals as we speak. Do you feel that there's a close connection because of things like that?
Yeah, like there's a strong, of course, there's a strong connection between the animal agriculture and the climate or environmental impact. And looking here in our traditional and the factory farming system is just being introduced here in Nepal, so the impact is being visible right here from like none to now we can see how it is rising, and people are not even let near those areas. So it is a thing to it is a topic to think about, and we have been talking about this topic to environmental groups as well, and they have uh, gone vegan, and like most of few of them have gone vegan, and they are talking about it as well, they are researching. It's a little difficult because it's a few of the companies who are doing that, and it's very difficult to gather the information from them. They keep it very secure right now. So yeah, it's a like strong link between those two, and it should be talked about even in the governmental sectors. Yeah, those sectors who are there to protect the environment. So it should be talked with the environmental groups who like most of them talk about deforestation and plastic use, and they never seem to talk about veganism or uh, plant-based food. So yeah, it should be taken as a step. It should be taken uh, as a responsibility to talk about this to those groups as well. I think
I
Peter
think,
wants to say something.
yeah.
Um, with your project, how come their name's in English? Out of interest.
Since we're English is most English is most common language nowadays. Like majority of people in city areas can understand English, and we are mostly targeting the students and like school students and university students. So that's why we kept it in English.
So, at universities in Nepal, are they are people taught in English then, as opposed to a local language?
Yes, mostly. So there are
Uh,
some universities that fully depend upon the Nepali language, but majority of schools and university they teach English language.
oh, okay, that's interesting.
How many languages do you have in Nepal? It's like not related to the animal rights movement, but
Oh, I'm not sure. It's more than 20 local languages. I'm not sure, but Nepali is the most common, and English is the second common. Sandana mentioned that people here think that vegetarian and vegan people are the same. We actually dealt with this when we were going to restaurants during our first few protests, and we asked the waiter if the food was vegan, and he said yeah, and he went in to the kitchen and he then came back and he asked, "Do you guys eat cheese in your food?" And then we understood that people are still confused about what those are. Oh, Sanjana mentioned there's 123 languages in Nepal. Oh, that's a lot. I accidentally had a chapati cooked in ghee. The waiter said I will make everything vegan. So you have to be extra careful with the waiter. You have to explain that not to include any dairy and meat products in that, and some of them will do, and like that's very irritating. I've found some of them like uh, I got a plate of chow mein with meat pieces in them, and I asked them to like change the dish. I asked them for veg option, not one with the meat pieces. And what they actually did was they just took out the meat pieces and brought me the same dish. And we found a small piece and then we scolded them. Like we have to be extra careful while eating outside. It's more better to cook it from home and take it if you have time. But if you are eating outside, you have to be careful if you are not eating at a vegan restaurant.
Is there someone else who still has a question, or did we skip a question in the chat? You can ask again. Oh yeah, so they ask about the address of your page, so the Facebook page. If you can share it in the chat,
Oh yes,
so
sure.
people can follow or support it. I had another question, but I forgot it. I like two questions. I had the one about like the plant-based food, and I had another one, but no, it's not popping up. Let's see. Sonjana also shared a page. Peter
Peter.
has another.
Um, back to the whole using English thing. I was thinking, you were saying that people think in Nepal think that veganism's coming from outside of Nepal. Maybe the speaking in English adds to that effect. Maybe if you're speaking Nepali, then they wouldn't think, oh, it's just all these Westerners coming in and trying to push an agenda or something. I don't know.
While doing the outreach, we talk to people in the local language. But I think it's just something that people becoming skeptical about things. Like if you bring anything new, they will just blame it on something that's been brought from outside. So I think that's just an excuse because like lots of people uh, listen to what we have to say and they agree with what we said, even though they do not promise on doing anything at that moment. But I think there are people who even like call us out on saying that we take money from foreign NGOs, and yeah, those kind of people exist. So I don't think it's about the name or how we talk, but we try to keep it talk in the local language as much as possible.